we look back at World War I, for example, and see this war that nationalism is the major cause of, and there's 38 million casualties. Okay, so that's secular violence, presumably, if we follow this schema. If we ask who has killed more people over the last 100 years, Muslim regimes or atheist regimes? Well, the atheists win, and it's not even close, really. Marxist atheist regimes are said to be responsible for as many as 110 million deaths over the last 100 years. And so just the Mao and Stalin and the Khmer Rouge are responsible for as many as 70 million, and all were militantly atheist. So the last 100 years have seen frequent war waged for oil, land, flags, free markets, democracy, ethnicity, and a host of other secular causes. So Richard Wentz's book, Why People Do Bad Things in the Name of Religion, includes not only Islam and Christianity and Buddhism and so on, but consumerism, secular humanism, football fanaticism, faith in technology, and a host of other ideologies and practices fall under the rubric of religion. He talks about the football fanatic situating himself in front of the TV on Monday night with his sandwiches and his beer, and he describes this in Eucharistic terms. And so he concludes, perhaps all of us do bad things in the name of religion. Now, I think he's intuited correctly that people do violence for all sorts of reasons. And Harris is by no means alone in this. He's a particularly kind of crude version of this argument, but it's really no different than the logic under which the Iraq War was launched, right? We need to make the Middle East safe for democracy and secular kinds of society. As I show in my book, there are countless voices making such arguments for violence. Europeans often assume that America goes to war because it's a religious country. But as political scientist Colin Duke has shown, America goes to war, he says, quote, for liberal reasons or not at all. So even under George W. Bush, who was a fervent evangelical, the government and the foreign policy establishment justified military intervention on the basis of free elections and free markets, never for Christian reasons. So let me finish. Here's a summary of my argument. There's no essential difference between so-called religious and secular. So there's no good reason for thinking that religious ideas are more inherently prone to violence than secular ideas and practices. And the idea that something called religion is essentially prone to violence can be used as an ideological justification for the violence of so-called secular social orders. So much of our discourse around these issues is guided by broad stereotypes. Stereotypes like, well, secular people have only facts, while religious people have only beliefs. And I'm not sure I believe in non-believers. I think everybody believes something, right? So I think it's much more conducive to trust if you tell me what you believe and I tell you what I believe, and then we can have a conversation. But we've been convinced that we can't seriously disagree with people without violence erupting, and I'm just not sure that that's the case. I'm quite convinced that it's not the case, that we can disagree with people in a deep way, people that are really different from us, and yet live peaceably with them. So-called religious people are not mindless dupes. Muslims are not programmed to commit violence by a few passages in the Quran.